We're going to be addressing challenging behaviors, which is something that most people that are caregivers are familiar with in one sense or another. But really, today's episode, we want to focus on not necessarily giving tips and strategies on how to mitigate challenges, but really focusing more on your experience as a caregiver and how to support you through that. So today's guest is Laurie Thompson. Laurie works with the geriatric population, family caregivers, and care staff in a variety of different care settings. She believes in a holistic approach towards healing and, again, works with many clinical settings, including hospitals, assisted living, adult family homes, memory care, helping families in home care companies. She collaborates with a variety of interdisciplinary medical teams, and her work consists of one-on-one therapy with the caregivers and as well with older adults and those that might have memory impairment, and treatment planning for challenging behaviors with folks who are living with dementia. She enjoys supporting family members, medical staff, and other supports who provide one-on-one care. She says that she strives towards an individualized approach and intervention in her work and enjoys collaborating with a larger team. So one of the things that I will share about Laurie is that she is on my team. She's one of my amazing team members and has been with me for, 10 years at least, Laurie, right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I am so excited to talk to you about this topic. It's such an important topic. So often when folks that we are working with have, I'm using air quotes here for people that aren't watching, when people have, quote, challenging behaviors, the focus is drawn to the behavior. The focus is drawn to the person exhibiting the behaviors. And we do a lot of education and support in facilities. I know you do. We have contracts with the state of Washington as challenging behavior specialists. But I think what is often missed is this focus on caregivers and what is the caregiver experience when trying to manage and mitigate and keep people safe and also provide care when these behaviors are occurring. So the first thing I would say is, I don't know if I said this really, I was reading some of your bio, but you are a licensed mental health counselor. You do specialize with the geriatric population. You are a dementia connection specialist. You also are a sexual and intimacy wellness certified practitioner. Do I have that right with dementia?
Yes.
I'm not sure if that came out in the right order, but
All right. Yeah.
yes. So I feel like you're just really well positioned to be having this conversation with us today. And I hope our listeners get a good sense of education and support and ideas. And if nothing else, validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Laurie, why don't you tell us just briefly, give us an idea of why you came into this work or how did you get here or what? You just give us a little bit of a history and background so folks get a good feel for you.
Yeah. I started out working in skilled nursing facilities with my bachelor's in psychology, working one-on-one with residents in long-term care, helping, coaching, supporting family members, care staff there. And I recognized what I really valued most in the social work field. There's a lot of logistical work, discharge planning, things like that. But what I really valued was the one-on-one time in talking with the residents, getting to know their history, their story, when certain challenges came up, just meeting those needs. And then I met a Laura Valancourt, and meeting you, gosh, when was that? Probably 2010, 11 or so. And then meeting you and going back to get my master's in counseling psychology. I knew I always wanted to stay with the geriatric population. And of course, in your work you were already doing, just paving the way there and coming to the elder care team has just been, like you said, I can't believe it's been 10 years, but we have such a variety in this work, and you said it beautifully. It's just been such a fun journey, but I always saw myself working with geriatrics since I was a kid, really, just always drawn to that population. So it's when your work doesn't feel like work, you just,
Yes. I just said that in a session today with a new client, just the gratitude that I feel, and I know you and other folks on my team, that we do work that feeds our spirit so much that it doesn't feel like work. Yeah. Gosh, let's just dive in because
yeah.
this is such an important topic. And you actually, Laurie, really is the senior counselor on these contracts I have for the state of Washington for as a challenging behavior consultant. And you've seen, oh my gosh, such a variety of challenges over the years. And I just want to stress the importance for me and on this podcast is to really support caregivers. And so often when we're caring for other individuals, whether are living with dementia or not, attention and the focus is usually on the care receiver and their needs, their challenges, planning. It all revolves around that individual. And in my work, my goal is to shift that focus over and emphasize the necessity to support the caregiver, because we all know if that caregiver spirals down or crumbles or something happens, then that whole house of cards comes tumbling down. And so in my opinion, in the work that I've done, it's just paramount to support the caregiver. So in our talk today about challenging behaviors, I'm excited to emphasize the experience of the caregiver. So Laurie, let's just jump right in. And I wonder if we could start with just really understanding and talking about the emotional impact that caregivers experience when they are caring for somebody who might be having some of these, quote, challenging behaviors. And actually, you know what? Before we talk about that, Laurie, let's give a broad overview of what some of those challenges might look like for caregivers. And we'll just do a quick brain dump because sometimes I think caregivers don't fully recognize what a challenging behavior might be. So yeah, let's just jump in on a brainstorm real quick.
Yeah. And where it comes from and why it happens. I think in our time meeting with the caregivers, when there is that understanding and education about this is what this is and why, is always a good start. So we know with dementia comes changes in the brain, damaged brain cells. This disrupts and really impacts how someone with dementia communicates. And we'll come back to talking about behaviors and challenges are a form of communication. This affects their behaviors and emotions, and it makes it hard for someone to just navigate the day-to-day. Their reasoning and judgment is, of course, impaired. For example, damage to part of the brain that helps with decision making, that can also lead to inappropriate behaviors or challenges. We know that folks with dementia a lot of the time have trouble communicating, hard to express their needs and their wants. So sometimes we see this coming out as what looks like agitation or anger, maybe some anxious, tearfulness. And this, of course, is frustrating and can lead to just becoming more upset. And so we want to come back to caring for yourself here as the caregiver. And just memory loss, also, I'm thinking of even physical discomfort, pain, things like this that cause challenges.
There's so many there, but I think you bring up that good point that all behavior is communication. And so when someone doesn't have the capacity or the ability to access the most common way that we are used to communicating in our society and our culture is verbally. And so when that ability is impaired, as caregivers, as healthcare providers, as community members, we have to remember that there are so many other ways to communicate and not just verbally. And so the term challenging behaviors is used a lot. I don't even personally like that term, but that's the most common one people are used to. But yeah, we have to recognize that all behavior is communication. And so I would challenge our listeners out there to take a moment and pause and think about all behaviors that are being communicated, not just the challenging one. What other behaviors are we noticing? Maybe we notice a behavior of somebody, oh gosh, grabbing a pillow and hugging it, or going to the refrigerator and opening the door. Whether when we get curious about what these certain behaviors, what they're saying or what someone is seeking out, it can be fun. It can be learning new ways of connecting with our loved ones. The thing is, we are programmed to think in positive or negative, right? That somebody is yelling or getting aggressive, or somebody is refusing to eat or refusing to take their meds, or disrobing, or all these different types of behaviors that we might see as negative.
Yes.
That increases our stress as caregivers. And then we've talked about this before. I'm going to throw this out. And then how when human beings are living in a high stress environment or experiencing high levels of stress, quite literally, the parts of our brain that we can access that's creative and curious and open to finding solutions, those parts of the brain, that part of the brain gets shut down, and we narrow our focus so that we're only focusing on the problem at hand. And that it's this vicious cycle. It raises our stress levels. When our stress levels raise, our attention narrows, and our brain isn't wired to think creatively or to find solutions. We're in that state because we're in a state of survival, quite literally. And so when we're faced with someone who is being loud or being agitated, or even if they're not, even if they're just refusing or resisting care, our stress levels go up because we feel responsible. And so we're not able then to access the part of our mind or brain that would allow us to relax and come at things with a different approach. And I just wanted to highlight what you said, all behaviors communication and what happened to caregivers in the face of that.
I think what you're talking about too is when we start talking about we're coming into this cycle then with our stress and our inabilities because of what's going on, then feeds into that caregiver to our loved ones with dementia's relationship and the dynamic there. And there's this cycle, which could be a whole other episode in itself.
Right?
Yeah. And just the ability to get curious. So much of it too, we see whether, this person with dementia is living at home or in a care setting, things that we wouldn't even think of, like their environment. There's a lot of noise, maybe a lot of people, activity, you coming and going, staff coming and going, things like this. So those sudden changes in their environments can also cause stress and overwhelm. And of course, feelings of loneliness, sadness, all these changes they've had over maybe sometimes many years can show up as anger or withdrawal or crying. And I know you hear it too, Laura, so many of the family members, the caregivers that we work with might say, mom or dad's just maybe being this way because they're just stubborn or they don't. And that's okay. And maybe that is part of it. Maybe we're seeing former parts of their personality showing up in some ways. But I think it's just helpful, again, as we're opening up about this, talking about maybe more of what's happening in the brain and these changes. And the reality is that where they're at mentally, their abilities are just not what they used to be. And that's a hard place to be.
It is. You're making me think of the importance of reframing, that it's important to think about that behavior or that challenge differently, in that they are communicating in the best and only way that they have the ability to. And so when we think of it that way, that can sometimes help take a big step back. But let's just name a few challenges that you have seen, some common ones, like the ones I mentioned a few before. Disrobing. Actually, here, let's do this. I had a list. I didn't pull it up, darn it, of high, medium, and low risk behaviors. And that I find that sometimes helps families think about in a different way, because the main question that I ask people is, who is the behavior impacting really? And that helps you categorize whether it's a high safety risk, a medium safety risk, or a low safety risk as far as these certain behaviors go. And so on the lower safety risk or lower behavioral safety risk issues might be things like,
I have a good example of that too.
yeah, okay. Like the ones I think of are things like the person that is doing laundry over and over, and it's the behavior, it's totally inconvenient, of course. And is it really hurting anyone? Is it just, it's more inconvenient to caregivers that are having to monitor this and go through laundry soap or
Exactly.
and then toilet paper flushing, or there's a variety of different behaviors that can be just more annoying, but they're not really hurting anyone.
Yeah. Who is the
low risk ones?
Yeah, you think, like you said, who is this a problem for? I'm thinking of, this has come up a few times. One client in particular with dementia, every day at about 2, 3 o'clock, she was packing up her bags and going to the train station. And of course, as you're saying, this causes, why is she doing this? I wish she would just relax. But in observing her, maybe being an outsider, just taking a second, and she loved it. She loved packing her bag and getting excited about talking about where she was going and wandered around. And that's right when we come back to,
Yeah.
okay, I think that's okay.
Yeah. And the reframing, is this really a problem? Is this really not a problem? Who is it a problem for?
Yeah.
So let's throw out some medium safety risk behaviors that might, and folks, you can probably fill in the blanks.
Right.
I know I'm doing this on a whim. I should have made a list before. I just didn't think about it, but medium behaviors, go ahead.
Yeah, I think resisting care, maybe more verbal outbursts, yelling out, screaming. A lot of time we see collecting or hoarding newspapers, magazines. These are
Food. Well, yeah, people will hoard food or hide food or their briefs. They go to the bathroom, and then I can't tell you how many families have shared with me that their loved one doesn't know what to do with the messy underwear, the brief, and will hide it in a drawer and so I think there's some excellent examples. The one that I'm thinking of too is the disrobing. It isn't really hurting anyone else, but it's maybe especially if there's other residents around or the involved. It's a dignity kind of issue. But the refusal of care, I think, is the biggest one that we see a lot. And that can look like, really, when we think of the ADLs. So for those of you maybe not familiar with that term ADLs, it stands for activities of daily living. And that's often how we measure the more functional needs of folks that have impairments. And so we're measuring things like, how much help does someone need toileting or bathing or dressing or transferring? And so in each of those areas, we can look at if a person living with dementia is resisting taking their medication or doesn't want to shower or bathe or doesn't want to change their clothes or doesn't want to use their walker or their cane for support or doesn't want to let caregiver get near them to help them transfer from a bed to a chair. Those areas can be that's probably where we see the most behaviors occur. And again, today we're not focusing so much on strategies and interventions on helping and preventing those behaviors, but we really want to emphasize again today what that is like for you as a caregiver and how you mitigate that. And of course, a lot of that will be understanding the tools and strategies towards supporting your loved one. So one of the things, I'll just throw one strategy out since we're right heavy on this topic, and then I want to get to the high risk behaviors too, is that probably the number one thing that caregivers can do is check in with themselves about their own energy. Because just as we said before, folks living with dementia don't always have the ability or capacity to tap into their intellectual mind and verbalize or have insight related to how they're feeling, but they still feel it. They still experience emotion and they still react. And so those folks are reading the energy of the room often way before we do.
Yeah.
How many of us have walked into a room and just felt, "Ooh, this doesn't feel comfortable. I just don't feel right here." Or the opposite, you walk into a space and you just relax, or you meet a new person and you get those feelings as well. There is something to be said about the energy that you bring when you're interacting with your loved one. They're going to know you're stressed often before you do. And they will respond to that. And before you are providing care, or especially if there's an area where we know that somebody historically has been resistant to care, we want to take a step back, take a deep breath, check in with yourself, and then proceed. I think that's probably the number one thing that caregivers could do to help themselves and their loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And that comes back to that cycle piece. I was talking a few weeks ago. I can think of examples where families might say, I guess what I'm thinking of is coming back to knowing your own triggers, or maybe seeing those patterns when your loved one is maybe displaying a certain behavior where you know you're going to be tense, and what can we talk about or do ahead of time. I'm thinking of a family member I know when my loved one with dementia, when they say, I don't need your help anymore, I can do this by myself. Then the caregiver noticing their own stress, upset, agitation, and then we come back into the cycle. And so I think there's just a lot of navigating and inner work on, and the caregiver already has so many roles, but just having that ability to be a little more trying to be in tune with yourself as much as possible.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And of course, it's our family members that are going to trigger us the most, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
It's our parent or other loved one that
Yeah.
we have this whole history there. And one strategy that could be helpful is to take a moment and write a list. Just write a list. Start a list of those times that you felt yourself get triggered. And really the reason that just the act of doing that called attention to it. Because what can happen is we react unconsciously. We're not aware of our reaction. Our emotions are the realm of the subconscious. And so something happens and we react, and then we realize we reacted.
Yeah.
So by bringing awareness to those times that we have reacted in ways we don't want to, or bringing awareness to those things that might trigger us, when we're aware of it, then we have more power to respond in the way we want.
Yes.
So it can be helpful. We don't want to focus on that necessarily, but we want to bring it out of the unconscious realm, out of the subconscious realm, and call attention to it so that it doesn't happen over and over again.
Yeah.
And then the second thing would be to then, in your mind, because if we're talking about the realm of the subconscious and the power that has in our lives, we can then begin to imagine how it could have looked differently or how you want it to look next time.
Yeah, and you're catching those. We're gonna talk about catching those patterns too. When you're writing it down, you're giving it an outlet. You're giving those emotions, those occurrences a place to go. I think I always tell my caregivers, never underestimate the power of just writing it out, scribbling it out whenever you get a moment, because that's a practice. You're learning about yourself and how much self-care that can really be.
So let's move on. Oh, Or
Yeah. Oh
just
no,
give
I
us
think you're
your,
gonna do the high
yeah,
risk.
we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So what, yeah, you want to throw out some high risk behavior, high safety risk behaviors.
I think, yeah, when we're talking about high risk, we're leaning more toward behaviors that are more of a safety risk, wandering and exit seeking, more severe violent outbursts and agitation, combativeness, of course, meaning physically the person with dementia is maybe harming themselves or looking to harm other people, throwing self-harm.
Yeah, for sure. Those immediate kind of crisis type
Mhm.
situations. And again, folks, boy, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are too, because this is obviously not an exhaustive list at all. So if you want to shoot us an email and share some of your low, medium, high risk, we'll be posting this episode on our upcoming YouTube channel, yet to be launched. And we have an Instagram account, Life on Repeat as well, Life on Repeat podcast. And yeah, we just love discussion about it. So feel free to share your experiences or your thoughts or ideas here as well. Laurie, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how caregivers might begin to recognize burnout and stress related to caring for somebody that might have some of these resistant types of behaviors.
Yeah, I think recognizing burnout, again, this is going to come with the caregiver being a little more in tune with themselves about exactly what's going on, listening to your body, listening to what's your self-talk going on in your head, things like this. I'm in thinking back, we see caregivers, it's oftentimes what I see, I don't know about you, is that when we're working together, it's maybe easier for us to help the caregiver recognize that's what burnout is, right? Because again, when the caregiver is often in that survival mode and the day-to-day logistics, my gosh, we can't underestimate how heavy of a load the caregivers have. So I would say looking back, I think of things like I'm starting my day, but I don't even know what to do first. There's too much on my plate, the caregiver, to even know where to begin. Maybe persistent tiredness, fatigue, decreased motivation, things like just being easily tearful, easily frustrated, triggered. When you're, I think a lot of the times I will also say that when you're in that survival mode, you're maybe oftentimes keeping everything pushed down. You're not attending to a lot of the time, maybe to your own needs, or even knowing what they are to begin. We're pushing them down, we're not recognizing them, and then they come out in the middle of the night or during the day where, you park your car and you start to cry, and it's just like caregiver might think, where is this coming from? And then we talk about, oh yeah, of course this is where this is coming from. So I think a lot of in the beginning, before a caregiver maybe starts these practices, is it's so unknown, but when there's someone who can help name it and encourage that inner work.
Yeah. And normalizing the ups and the downs. I know that I've just had so many people tell me I hit the end.
Yes.
I can't do anymore. I'm done. This is it. This is bottom. And something needs to change. And then 2 hours later, a day later, the caregiver is calm. And then they say, why was I thinking that? Oh my gosh, everything's fine. I can do this. It's
Yeah.
a constant roller coaster. And people talk about it. I don't know how many of you have heard this, but this idea that it's a marathon, not a sprint, the caregiving. And so the importance of recognizing there will be ups and downs. There will be sharp skyrocketing stress levels, and then things will settle, and then there will be everything in between. And the importance of just knowing yourself. We can't overemphasize enough the importance of caring for yourself. Because like I said in the beginning, if you as a caregiver spiral down, then everything is going to fall apart. So I'm a huge fan, I know Laurie is too, on providing and creating support plans, whether you call it a care plan or a whatever you want to call it. But for you, the caregiver, what are the things that first bringing awareness, right? What is it that typically gets you tipped into that high stress sympathetic state of your nervous system? Is it the little things? Is it the big thing? Is it that you didn't get good enough sleep? Is it that you're not eating regularly? Is it that when, your loved one is asking the same question over and over again, it gets to you? Everyone has their own different triggers that really get to you. So first recognizing what that is helpful. Maybe it's when you don't have a break after a week or whatever it is. Call it out. Once you can bring awareness to it, then we can manipulate it. Then we can come up with a plan to support that. So that's huge, I think.
Yeah. And once you know what your needs are, whether it's 30 minutes a day or every few days or one outing, a full day a week, once you know that, please say what you need. If you have other supports, make that known. Once you recognize that in yourself, we always say too, by caring for yourself, you are caring for your loved one.
Yeah.
Period.
If you need to reframe it to this is how you're caring for your loved one, and reframe it that way for sure, because that's really what it is. Yeah. We talked too about having baby things you can do, medium things, and big things. Because sometimes most caregivers don't have the luxury of being able to take a week off and go on vacation somewhere. Most people can't do that. That would be an amazing self-care experience, of course. And so that would be a big thing. You can just take off and get away and remove yourself from a situation. And there are also middle-sized things and little teeny things. The little teeny things might just be that every time you go to the bathroom, you shut the door, turn off the light, and just take a deep breath, because that is a moment you have to yourself. Something as small and tiny as that. We talk about habit stacking. So doing something that is attached to something you're already doing, like brushing your teeth every morning or making coffee or the habit of going to the bathroom. What are the tiny little things you can do? Is it telling yourself a mantra? Is it just regrounding and centering yourself? Is it having a moment of mindfulness where you're tapping into your body and the sensations that you're experiencing? Those things can go a long way. My doctor told me one time, gosh, I don't know, anyway, what she was saying to help reset my nervous system, reset my stress levels, if you raise your feet above your heart, it does something. I need to look this up, actually. It does something to reset your autonomic nervous system. And so if you have a moment, even if it's just a minute, to lay down on the floor, put your feet up on the couch, just elevate your feet for a moment. I couldn't believe what a huge difference that made for me in and of itself, even if you have to do it a couple times a day. So those little things, start paying attention, thinking about the little things that you can do. And then the medium things might be things like what? Meeting friends for coffee once a week, or allowing yourself a caregiver to come into the home so that you can take a nap, or that you can go listen to a book on tape or go on a walk, or those sorts of things too.
I know what's coming to mind is, how many times have you felt in working with our caregivers, you're just amazed at how much they can and do and will handle. I can think of times I walked into homes working with clients with dementia who have a family caregiver or a caregiver, where there's signs on the wall of, "Mom, there's not someone outside looking at you," or "Please don't scratch your skin," or "Here's your shower day." And when you just get that visual and you walk into the world of the caregiver, sometimes I just think, wow, like and I think a lot of time it's hard for the caregiver to even recognize that this is so much when it's your day to day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we pivot? Because I think this is an important thing I want to bring up on the conversation, back to some of the more high risk behaviors that people might experience. And you named a bunch, which is, the one that I'm thinking of are that I don't think gets talked about enough. And that is this idea of, I'm using air quotes here, domestic violence. And really is what it is. And that is when a spouse or a parent or somebody with memory impairment is getting aggressive. And I know this, that family members are so reluctant to admit this to others or to share their fear about their safety with others. It's just a taboo topic, if you will, because we all know people in the right mind wouldn't want to hurt us. And we understand they're acting out in the only way they know how. And sometimes caregivers blame themselves because they think I shouldn't have somehow I contributed to the agitation, or somehow I'm responsible for their behavior. And I don't want other people to worry about me. I've got this. I don't want to involve authorities. I don't want to. Yeah, this is the whole piece that I think is just important to bring up. And one of the things that might be helpful for caregivers to know is, first and foremost, I want to stress safety, obviously. If you are in danger, it's okay to call 911. There can be points where it's just out of your hands. Yeah. And the things that you might think about doing to prepare yourself is creating a safety plan for yourself and what that might look like. So maybe, Laurie, we can talk a little bit about some things that caregivers might be able to do to have a safety plan in place if those behaviors get dangerous, or there's a history of the person being aggressive or violent with a caregiver.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What first comes to mind is we talk about making sure you're removing any weapons, any things in the home, maybe taking away keys but yeah, things that can.
Yeah, there are folks who we've coached that have had firearms in the house. And we've had some creative ways of, sometimes it's just removing them. There are situations where that is not a possibility. I know that without understanding the history and understanding each situation, that where the police have removed the firing pin out of a gun, or they've been locked in safes, or they've been inherited to their children, or somebody's going to go clean it and they take it, or there's all different ways to mitigate that. But that's a great one, is just removing the obvious lethal sources that people could access. I'm also thinking of things like getting in the habit of having your cell phone in your pocket at all times and make sure it's charged, just because you never know when something might happen. It could be in the kitchen, it could be in the garden, it could be in the car, we're never prepared for that. And so making sure that you have your cell phone with you, that it is charged, making sure you have some folks on your favorites list that you can call quickly. Again, don't hesitate to call 911 if you need to. If nothing else, just to stabilize the situation. Go ahead.
I think when I'm thinking of someone listening to this, they might think, would my loved one be detained? Would they go to jail? We've had that come up.
Yeah. And this is the thing, is we have seen the whole variety of things that can happen after that phone call, and some positive and some not so positive. But I think the most important thing is you have to weigh the risk versus the benefit of saving potentially your life. If you are in danger, then it's okay to reach out. It absolutely is okay. Depending on where you live, the different resources that are available, the training that the first responders have or don't have, every situation is different. If you do make a call, it is helpful to let the operator know where you are, and let them know that the person that you're concerned about, and besides yourself, is somebody that has dementia. They don't understand their behavior, and that they are also scared or agitated or stressed or anxious, or that can be helpful for them to know as well. And then they'll walk you through where's the best way to enter the house, where are you in the home, things like that. But other things that you can do might be, I really encourage folks to take a mental note of where are the locked doors in the house? Which rooms have locked doors? Is it the bathrooms, the bedrooms? Get an idea of what parts of the house, if you had to get away quickly and shut the door for your safety, could you do that in the different parts of the home? And again, you would hopefully have your phone with you as well. I encourage people to also have a set of keys, both inside the home and outside the home. Sometimes we can get locked out of the house. Sometimes you have to leave in a hurry. And so just knowing that there is a set of keys outside and a set of keys inside if you needed. Yeah. But just start to think about safety plans. We'll have people agree to call or check in, just a text. Some families will just say, yeah, my friend or my daughter, 9 o'clock, sometime between 9 and 10 o'clock at night, they'll just send how are you? And I send a thumbs up. That's our little check-in. And doesn't have to be a whole conversation. But sometimes even just having that can not only give the caregiver peace of mind that if something happened, somebody would be checking in, but also if just knowing that you're not alone, that it can feel so lonely. Laurie, yeah, I know we've been talking for a little while here. And so just wrapping up our conversation, maybe it would be helpful to end on just a recap of a couple things that caregivers can do to take care of themselves when they're in an environment of high stress or when they're faced with some big challenges that can occur.
Yeah, I would say start trying, even baby steps, to start trying to get in the habit of recognizing your own signs of burnout, your own triggers, when you notice you begin to feel overwhelmed. Sometimes I think too, it's helpful, and it's obviously can be hard to stick to. Studies show that when we're in the caregiver mode and we might have, we'll encourage more routine, more structure in the day, it can alleviate some of the anxiety and some of the what do I do next, because you feel a little more grounded in your routine, your structure. Can be flexible, of course, but if you maybe start with some kind of an outline, that can alleviate some burnout too.
Yeah. And then checking in with your body. I think of it also a big one. Like when somebody asks me, are you stressed? I go right to my head, right? All the things spinning in my head. But that doesn't help me catch it before it's there. You know what I mean?
That's huge.
Setting an alarm on your phone or getting used to, like I said, the habit stacking. Every time you sit down for a meal, take a deep breath, check in with your body. Am I feeling on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
10? Or am I down at a 3? Just because once you plant the seed of asking yourself how you're doing, then the more you do that, the more you start having awareness about how you're doing. And people have different symptoms. Sometimes it's our breath. We're breathing shallow and not taking deep breaths. We don't even realize it. Sometimes we're clenching our jaw. Sometimes our neck's tense. Our body is constantly telling us and talking to us. We're usually the last ones to listen.
Yeah, I love the word curious. We love to get curious. Start getting curious about yourself here. The more we can alleviate those tense cycles too with our loved ones, like we mentioned before, when we can have a little bit more calmness and awareness, we're helping the environment. We're helping the dynamic with your loved one here. Even just the small steps, just don't underestimate them. And absolutely knowing when to walk away. We talk about that a lot with loved ones. There's a lot of guilt in staying in the challenge and staying face to face and having something heightened going on, whatever that might be. You're arguing or correcting them, or there's something going on. If you're feeling like you're about to get to a point of too much anger, frustration, it is okay to walk away. It's okay to go outside. Even if things aren't resolved, we know that You can always, we talk so much about redirecting, reapproaching. That's
Yeah. Yep. And that goes for yourself too.
yeah.
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 Totally. Yeah. How important really is it that they take a shower today at this point in time when your stress levels are so high? Yeah. Laurie, I love talking with you. Discussions are always enlightening and fun, and we are always sharing ideas back and forth. And so thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yes. And all you caregivers, you are the unsung heroes. We love you. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, I hope this was helpful for everyone, and stay tuned for our next episode.